It's a must-see highlight of the winter season in Ottawa. It's the world's largest skating rink, and in 2007 it was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I'm talking, of course, about the Rideau Canal, located here in the nation's capital. But I bet you didn't know that this famous waterway has an interesting history, and many credit the building of the Rideau Canal for the creation of the city of Ottawa. The Rideau Canal was originally built as a defense precaution in the wake of the War of 1812. During the war, Canada had come close to being conquered by its American neighbors. Naval strength had become a major concern and was critical to Canada's defense. The St. Lawrence River was becoming increasingly vulnerable, and the British government needed a more secure supply route between Montreal and their military base in Kingston. It was this desire for an alternative waterway that led the government to begin their search for a new military supply line. It was as early as 1816 that Royal Engineers were given the task of surveying new routes for a navigable waterway. Their search led them to the Rideau Lakes. French for curtain, the name Rideau was derived from the curtain-like appearance of the river's twin waterfalls, where they join the Ottawa River. However, no real action would be taken until years after the initial survey. Planning of the canal route would finally begin in 1823, and construction of the canal would begin 3 years later in a forest clearing on the Ottawa River. It was Colonel John By, a retired British military engineer, that was chosen to supervise the construction of the canal. Colonel By was first posted in Canada in 1802, where he was tasked with improving the navigation system of the St. Lawrence River. He returned to Europe during the Napoleonic Wars and retired from the military at the end of the battle. But it was By's engineering experience in Canada that would lead him to be called back to undertake the most ambitious project of his career. Colonel John By's first task would be to establish a town to house the men who were to work on the canal. The area was named Bytown, in honor of the colonel. He envisioned a canal that would join the Cataraqui and Rideau rivers, and had chosen to use a slackwater system for the locks. This would involve flooding the area between one lock and the next to navigable water levels. The slackwater method would avoid the need for extensive excavation. From the beginning, the project would be overridden with obstacles. Working conditions were terrible. The landscape was wrought with swamps, thick forests, and rocky wilderness. Extreme weather in the winter made the already harsh working conditions even more unfavorable. It took approximately 2,000 men per year to make the Rideau Canal a reality. Construction was done mainly by Irish immigrants, French-Canadian laborers, and Scottish stonemasons. It's estimated that as many as 1,000 workers died from malaria, other diseases, and accidents. By November 1831, the Rideau Canal was built. In total, it took 6 years to complete. Consisting of 47 locks and 52 dams, the canal stretched 202 kilometers in length, and thus became one of the greatest engineering feats of the 19th century. On May 22, 1832, Colonel By, his family, and fellow officers boarded a vessel in Kingston for the grand opening voyage. It would be a week later, on May 29th, that the boat would sail into Bytown for the very first time. Final construction costs rose to over £800,000, extremely over budget. Given the unexpected cost overruns, Colonel John By was recalled to Britain, where he was questioned by a parliamentary committee before being cleared of any wrongdoing. Although the committee had exonerated By, he never received any formal commendation for his tremendous accomplishment. Colonel John By died in 1836 at the age of 53. His achievements, the building of the Rideau Canal and the founding of Bytown, never publicly recognized. After the completion of the canal, no further military altercations would take place between Canada and the U.S., which meant that the Rideau Canal would never be used for its intended purpose. However, it acted as a significant deterrent for future military invasions and played a pivotal role in the early development of our country. During the 1840s, the Rideau Canal would serve as the main travel route for immigrants heading to Upper Canada. It also became an essential commercial route, transporting heavy goods such as timber and grain to Montreal from other parts of the country. As the 20th century progressed, Canada saw the emergence of a national railway system, and it became cheaper to transport goods via train than by water. The Rideau Canal became renowned for its exceptional bass fishing, and the waterway was increasingly being used for recreational activities. Over the years, the canal has come under the control of various bodies. Upon its completion, it fell under the management of the British Ordnance. In 1972, responsibility of the maintenance of the canal was transferred to Parks Canada, who, to this day, continues to oversee and preserve the legacy of this historic waterway. In 1925, the Rideau Canal was designated a National Historic Site of Canada. And in 2007, it officially became a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which recognized the waterway as the best preserved example of a slackwater canal in North America. Today, it remains the only canal from the Great Canal Building era of the early 19th century that operates along its original route and with most of its original structures intact. Today, the canal continues to be a chain of lakes, rivers, and locks connecting the city of Kingston to Canada's capital. Over time, the canal has gone from being a military precaution to a waterway route for pleasure boats in the summer, and in the winter, a skateway that stretches 7.8 kilometers long. It remains an important part of Canadian history and tells the story of the men and women who helped build our country. And now you know.